In this video, Magnus Carlsen, the GOAT, he plays not just one rook sack, not just two rook sacks, but three back-to-back rook sacks in the game of the year at the 2020 World Cup tournament, and this video breaks it all down. Trust me, you do not want to miss how this game ends. It is Magnus Carlsen. At his very, very finest. All right, in the game, Magnus playing as white, opens 1e4, and his Russian super grandmaster opponent, Vladimir Fedoseev, he responds 1c6, the Caro-Kann Defense, a favorite of Gotham chess and many other players. From here, Magnus goes d4, and black goes d5, so far very standard stuff, and white here has a lot of options, including knight c3, knight d2, e takes d5, e5, and on and on and on, also f3, and so on. In the game, though, Magnus plays the strongest, most ambitious, most combative move right here. That is e5, the advanced variation, named after the advance of the e-pawn. Nothing fancy. All right, black here has two main ideas. You can go c5, counterattacking, or the more solid idea, as Vladimir played in the game, that is bishop to f5. Now, the idea behind this move is simple. Black wants to bring the bishop to here, and then go e6 with the bishop outside the pawn chain on the light squares. From here, Magnus, he's got a lot of options, and the two moves you pretty much only see at the highest level these days are knight f3, intending of fast castles, and also h4. But instead, in this game, Magnus plays a move you literally never see at the grandmaster level. He plays the move c4. Now, what is the idea behind this? It's very simple. Magnus here is gaining space and pressuring the weak pawn on d5. However, it's really not that common. Let's find out why in the game. Now, Vladimir Fedoseev, unfazed. He simply goes e6, bolstering d5, and of course, right now, he has that so-called bad light-squared bishop outside the pawn chain, making it actually a pretty good piece in this game. Now, Magnus, he continues, knight c3, pressuring d5 with the knight, and black flies out with the bishop with bishop b4. Black here violating opening principles, bringing out two bishops before those knights. Don't try this at home, folks, if you're under 1,000 ELO. Now, here Magnus, he takes on d5, and the standard move for black will be taking on d5 with the pawn. That is sort of the entire idea behind the Caro-Kann, bolstering d5 with your pawns at all costs. However, in the game, Vladimir Fedoseev, the Russian super GM, he takes back with the queen in the spirit of the Scandinavian defense. Okay, first of all, real fast, the knight on c3, it's pinned to the king. Obviously, white cannot take on d5. That is not a legal move, as the king would be under check by the bishop. However, later in the game, taking on d5 could be a serious threat. And especially with the black queen on d5, instead of the pawn, we're going to have a much more dynamic game at our hands. All right, from here, Magnus, how does he continue? Well, he starts with the move knight to e2, a move you commonly see in certain lines of the 3e4 Queen's Gambit accepted, but not really the Caro-Kann. The idea behind this, white here, is bolstering d4 as well as that knight on c3, and therefore Magnus can go, for example, a3, maybe even b4 later in the opening, trying to drive away that black dark squared bishop. All right, black here. Vladimir, how should he continue? Well, the queen on d5 is still not under attack, and therefore black can go, for example, knight to e7 or knight h6, and then castles. That would be the standard idea here. But instead, Vladimir, he's feeling especially afraid of that knight on c3, and he actually voluntarily brings the queen all the way back to the d8 square. Queen d8 played in the game, and this move is a little bit dubious and, to be honest, a little bit passive. Black here delaying castling for effectively no good reason, and the queen, I mean, there's a very good chance it would be better placed on a5 instead of d8 later in the game. Therefore, queen d8, both unnecessary and inflexible. Again, knight e7 was just a better idea. Now from here, Magnus, a3 is the move. The idea behind knight e2, bolstering c3, and then driving back this bishop in the game. The bishop goes to a5, bishop to a5, and now we have knight g3, targeting the other bishop on the f5 square, a pretty common idea in the classical variation of the Caro-Kann opening. Now here, black does not defend the bishop. Instead, Vladimir, or sorry, he does not retreat the bishop, I should say. Instead, Vladimir here, knight to e7 is played in the game, bolstering the bishop on f5 with the knight. Now, the idea is if white takes, black takes back, and black is doing just fine. He'll have two good knights, a safe king, a decent center, and so on, and overall, he shouldn't have that many problems. Magnus here, he knows that. He does not take on f5. Instead, bishop c4 is the move, setting up short castling on the king side. Magnus here, he knows his opening principles. He knows he must castle ASAP in the opening, as very soon the pieces will fly in the center, and you want your king all the way over to the king side where it is safe. Now, black here in the game, he plays the move bishop g6, which, to be honest, is a little bit surprising. I mean, if that is the idea, why did he not play it earlier instead of knight e7? I'm not entirely sure, and here Stockfish likes the idea of castling or c5, counterattacking on the queen side. Instead, bishop g6 is a little bit weaker. And here Magnus Carlsen on move 10. It's only move 10, and he unleashes the alpha 0 attack on the king side. Here we go. h4 is the move, threatening h5, driving back that bishop, and literally going for the attack out of nowhere on the king side. Now, I shouldn't say out of nowhere. Why here? As many strategic advantages on the king side, including his strong pawn on the e5 square, his queen having access to g4 and h5 potentially, the knight on g3, supporting an h5 advance of the pawn, and of course the vulnerable black bishop on the g6 square. So white here overall has a lot of key advantages on the king side, and that does make the attack with the alpha 0 h pawn that much stronger here in this position. Now black, what does he do about the threat of h5? Black's got to do something. If you don't do something, white can go h5, drive back the bishop to say f5, and white will get a huge, and I mean huge, attack. With that in mind, black's key ideas are likely h5 and h6. Now, in the game, Vladimir plays, according to the engine, the stronger move, and that is actually h6, but this move looks completely insane to me. You're allowing white to go h5, pushing back the bishop, and then to go queen g4, which it turns out Magnus Carlsen, the GOAT, he did in the game. h5, bishop h7, and then queen to g4. The queen flies out, targets g7, and look at this. The white piece is coordinating perfectly in this game. I mean, if black goes knight g6, blocking the attack, you lose the knight. Bishop g6, you lose the bishop. If g6, that weakens the king side so much as white takes on g6 and opens up the h file for the rook. That is the power of the alpha 0 advance all the way to the h5 square. And what can black do here? I mean, seriously, not a trick question. It's only move 13, and what can black do to defend this position? Well, there is one trappy idea I do want to point out. If black goes here, black technically defends the pawn, as if white takes on g7, black has the move rook to h7, and the queen is trapped. That is maybe the strongest idea here. Instead, in the game, Vladimir, he plays it safe and plays the move king to f8, defending g7 with his king. But now, look at the king. It's simply not well placed on f8, and the rook on the h8 square is also super weak. It's cut off from the center, and it's out of the game right now. All right, Magnus, he castles. And Vladimir Fedoseev here, he just goes knight d7, continuing development of the queenside pieces, that being by far the best and perhaps only decent square for that knight right now, as c6 is occupied by the pawn. Now, here, Magnus, he's got a lot of pieces out, his king is castled. How does he want to continue piling on the pressure? Well, one strategy might be, for example, bishop to e3 or f4 and rook a d1, bringing out those last pieces, but instead, the GOAT, he shows his class. He sees now is the time to attack. It is no time to finish development of the rook. Instead, it's time to attack with the knight. Knight to e4. The knight jumps in, and this knight now eyes squares like d6 and f6, believe it or not. And there are certain lines where either move could be super, super strong. All right, Vladimir, he continues to defend tenaciously. Bishop c7, bringing the bishop back to the defense where it targets the e5 pawn a little bit. Now, Magnus here, what does he play? Well, he slides back with the bishop to a2. What the heck is the idea behind this? The bishop was not under attack on c4. It voluntarily slides back to the a2 square. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. If you know why this is the move, comment down below. Tell me why this move right here is the right idea. To be honest, I don't really see it. Maybe white's getting out of the way of the b5 advance on the queen side, maybe, but that seemed like a nothing burger to me. And by the way, this game right here, this video, is sponsored by me, Dr. My Chess. If you want to join my free online community and finally learn how to reach 1,000 to 2,000 plus ELO as soon as possible, go to drmikechess.com. The link right there. It's also down below in the description and the pinned comment of this video. And I gotta say, drmikechess.com is so hot right now. If you're not in there, we're gaining like 10, 20, 30 new people a day. Seriously, it's the fastest growing online community there is right now in the chess space. So join there, I'll onboard you, I'll give you my free opening courses and so on, and we'll get you on the fast track to reaching 1,000 to 2,000 plus ELO, I guarantee it. Now, back to the video. All right, from here, Vladimir in this game of the year, knight to f5 is the move, jumping up with the knight. And trust me, things are about to get spicy. We're very, very close to the real attack in this game. All right, Magnus here. He trades on f5. Black takes back, and the queen slides back to the f3 square. Queen to f3. Now, black, queen to e7, getting the queen off the back rank. We have knight g3, attacking the bishop. Typical idea. Bishop h7, queen g4, sliding up. And now black. He's got to find some way to get counterplay. If he does literally nothing, white at some point is going to go f4, f5, take on e6, maybe even f6, and just spearhead the attack on the king side, and black will be as good as gone. Therefore, sooner or later, black's got to find some way to get at least some counterplay in this game. And he finds it with maybe the key Caro-Kann move in general, also very common in the Queen's Gambit decline and other openings. That, of course, is the advanced c5 on the queen's side. c5 attacking the base of the pawn chain, a very typical idea in many openings. Now, here, Magnus, how does he respond? Well, he ignores the attack on that d4 pawn, shockingly, and plays the move bishop d2. I say shockingly because as soon as that pawn falls on d4, the e5 pawn will be vulnerable as well. And if the e5 pawn falls, white's attack will crumble into a million pieces. So, Magnus here, the audacity, not defending d4, and Vladimir, he doesn't punish him for it. Rook d8 is the move, increasing the pressure, but opting not to capture on d4 right away. And here, he says, Vladimir, you Russian bear, you, thank you so much. f4, here we go. Now the real game begins. Magnus Carlsen going for the attack on the king side. Once you play this move, there is no going back. Your h pawn is on h5. Your f pawn's on f4. There's so much loft in front of the white king. When you play this move as white in this position, you are all in on the king side. There's no going back. You burn the bridges. You must attack. All right, black, knight b6. What's the idea? Increasing the pressure on that pawn on d4. Also eyeing d5 with the knight. Now here, Magnus, he plays a little bit of a waiting move. Bishop to c3, bolstering d4 with the bishop. And the bishop might be, emphasize might be very strong on this long diagonal later in the game, especially if, for example, these diagonals open up and the scope of this piece on c3 opens up like this. That could be very dangerous. But first, black, knight d5, he jumps in and blocks the attack of the bishop, blocks the advance of the d pawn on the d file, and just as importantly, threatens the fork on e3, which could be a game-ending fork on the queen and the rook. If black gets that in, white will lose a rook on the spot. So what does Magnus Carlsen do in this position on move 23 when his queen and rook are about to be under attack by a deadly fork? Well, Magnus Carlsen, again, he shows why he is simply in another class of chess skill. He's like the Sofia Vergara of chess players here, and he simply ignores the fork on the e3 square, and he sacks the rook. f5 is the move. Magnus Carlsen, you dog, you are not slowing down. What's the idea? If the knight jumps in, white simply takes the pawn, continuing the attack, and the f pawn on f7 is pinned to the king. Here, Vladimir, he flies in with the knight, knight to e3. He delivers the fork, the first rook sack of the game. Now, Magnus, the queen's under attack. It slides back, and Vladimir, Does he take on f1? He does not. And why the heck not? Instead, he takes on f5. Now, the reason why, if you take on f1, the other rook takes back, and just slow down and appreciate this position. The queen and the rook lining up with the black king on the f8 square. The f-file about to be blown the f open. The bishop on a2 slicing down this diagonal, and this bishop slicing down this one as soon as this diagonal opens up. Every single white piece, even the white knight, eyeing f5, every white piece is just a monster. And look at the black pieces. They're all miserable pieces. Unbelievable. And Vladimir Fedoseev, to his credit, the Russian bear, he sees taking on f1 is not the right move. He declines rook sack number 1, and he takes on f5. But trust me, there's plenty more where that came from. Here, Magnus, he takes on f5, jumps in with the knight. Knight takes f5, and here's the problem. If black takes back with the e-pawn right here, this diagonal is going to open up against the black king, and that will be deadly. So instead, Vladimir takes on f5 with the bishop, the Caro-Kann light-squared bishop. Now here, Magnus, he is not slowing down. d5 is the move. What is the idea? It is a deflection sacrifice, deflecting the e-pawn away from the defense of the bishop, and then you take the bishop, and if not, everything anyways gets blown open one way or another. Magnus Carlsen knows his elementary tactics in this game. Now Vladimir, where can he go? What can he do? What is there to be done? Again, taking on d5 is no bueno, mi amigo, and simply sliding the king over is also suicide, as then d6 would fork the queen and the bishop. Vladimir here, he's got to act right here, right now, and he finds the move bishop to b6, lining up the threat of c4 with the discovered attack on the king. Of course, that being the drawback of that f2 to f4 to f5 idea we saw earlier in the game, opening up the loft in front of the white king. Magnus here has got to be so careful. He sees the threat, bishop c4, he shuts it down. Magnus Carlsen blocking the idea of black immediately, and now Vladimir, he's feeling very vulnerable, naked and afraid, like me in my middle school prom. His king so vulnerable on the f-file, and it slides over to the g8 square. King to g8 is the move. Now here, Magnus, he seizes the day, d6, advancing that d-pawn, creating a passed pawn on the d6 square, knocking back the queen, and of course, lining up more ideas with the bishop on the king on the g8 square. Now from here, the queen, where can it go? If you go back, the queen is entombed on the back rank almost forever. Instead, Vladimir here playing more actively, queen to h4, flying out with the queen. Will black survive the attack before I run out of breath from holding my breath for 20 minutes straight? I don't know. Let's find out. Here, of course, the queen, it's also attacking the bishop on c4. Magnus Carlsen, he sees that, b3, defends the bishop for now, and now black, rook d7, blockading the d-pawn, also defending f7 in advance, a very cheeky multi-purpose idea. Now Magnus, you know what time it is. Queen to e2, sliding the queen off the f-file. What is the idea behind that? If you're paying attention, you know exactly what that means. Here, Vladimir, he's got to find some way to defend the bishop. Bishop g4 being the best idea here, sliding off the f-file, where Magnus would have his idea. But here, Vladimir, he doesn't see the idea by Magnus. Vladimir Fedoseev, a Russian super GM. Actually, he just won a very high-level tournament in 2025. I believe the Croatia Rapid and Blitz, the Superbet United Rapid and Blitz, something like that. There's a Rapid and Blitz tournament he just won, very high level. Vladimir Fedoseev, almost in the top 10 again, rated roughly 27, 40, 50-ish today. He plays a dubious move. Queen to g4. What is the problem? You know the problem. Rook takes f5, sacrificing rook number 2 in this game. Magnus Carlsen sacking 2 rooks out of 2. Now, Vladimir, what is the idea? What's the problem? If you take the queen on the e2 square, Magnus Carlsen, the idea from there is simply bishop takes, which looks insane. And if e takes, bishop b5 attacks the rook goes back, and then bishop c4. And somehow, some way, Magnus, despite being down the exchange, down the rook for the minor piece, also down the pawn, somehow he gets a winning position here. I do not understand it. It's melting my brain. Magnus Carlsen playing moves I can't even comprehend with Stockfish in front of me. Go figure. All right, black, queen takes f5. This game is well beyond my 2000 ELO brain. All right, Magnus, rook to f1. The rook slides over, attacks the queen, and has the x-ray attack on the pawn on the f7 square, which may or may not be very important. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Black, queen g5, getting out of the way of the attack. Bishop d2, harassing the queen nonstop is the goat. Queen d8, the queen flies back to the d8 square, and now queen g4, the queen re-entering the critical g4 square. We've seen it go here so many times in this game so far, and it's such a good square for the queen, attacking e6, attacking g7, and on and on and on. And here, Vladimir Fedoseev, he plays a waiting move. He feels like he's in some sort of Zugzwang, where he can't even make a productive move, and he plays the move here, a6. Talk about a wasted move. Literally no idea behind it. Maybe guarding b5, but not exactly the most enterprising move in this position. And here, Magnus Carlsen, if I can say his name right, Magnus Carlsen, demonstrating his sagacity. He plays the move we've all been waiting for. Rook takes f7, a clean sack of the rook. Don't even try to argue that one with me, Chess YouTube. The clean rook sack. What is the idea? No matter what black does, he is cooked. If he takes with the king, then queen takes e6 deadly. But if he takes with the rook, then again, queen takes e6, pins the rook to the king, threatens the rook, threatens everything. And from here, Magnus Carlsen would be cleaning up. Black here is simply cooked. What can he do? He takes with the king, but then queen takes e6. The queen flies it, attacks the king. The king goes back to the f8 square. Literally the only move here. Every other square being attacked by the queen or blocked by the pawn. King to f8, the only move. Queen to f5, attacks the king. King to e8, queen g6, king to f8, queen f5, king e8, queen g6, king to f8. And if Magnus goes back here to f5, it's a draw on the spot in this game. The triple rook sack would be all for nothing. But here, Magnus playing for a win. He doesn't do that. He finds the right idea. Magnus demonstrating his sagacity in this game. e6, attacks the rook and threatens the fork on e7. Black, what can he do? Queen to f6, the queen flies out. But here, Magnus Carlsen, he picks up the rook. Vladimir Fedoseev, the return rook sack on d7. Vladimir giving up the rook to trade the queens on g6 and now trying his best to defend in this game. But is it too little too late? Magnus, bishop to e6. Magnus being down the exchange. Vladimir, keep in mind, he's up material, but his rook is entombed on the h8 square. Vladimir all the way back on move 13, playing king to f8, and the rook has never, ever once moved the entire game since then. It's not looking good. All right, bishop d8 played in the game. Bishop to e6, h5. Vladimir trying to activate the rook, but now h6 is occupied by the bishop. He still can't do anything. King to f2, h4. The alpha 0 advance on the h5 square with the rook, but again, too little too late. Bishop g4, guarding h5, b5 is the move. King to f3, b4, a takes, c takes, and the final move of the game, king to e4. Magnus Carlsen jumping in with the king, advancing, and there's simply nothing black can do to stop the idea here of simply king d5, king c6, king b7, king c8, and you get the pawn. I'm sorry, you win the bishop. The black king cannot defend. Everything is cut off. The king cannot move. The rook cannot move. Everything being cut off by the white pieces. There's nothing to stop the march of the king to win the game and the bishop. My goodness, Magnus Carlsen, you dog, you've done it. The triple rook sack in the game of the year versus the Russian super GM. Oh, wow, what a game. All right, Chess YouTube, hope you enjoyed this video, watching me hold my breath for what feels like an eternity here. I don't know how I do it, honestly. It's really bizarre how I do that. But anyways, it's the only way I know how to commentate. So if you enjoyed the video, please show me some love from India, from the US, from wherever you are. Smash that like button, comment down below, and finally, DR Mike Chess, so hot right now. If you want to learn directly from me how to reach 1,000 plus or 2,000 plus ELO ASAP, join my free online chess community. Links right up there, drmikechess.com. You'll go to my school landing page. All you do, press join. From there, I'll onboard you. It's super, super simple. You'll get my free opening courses for the London system, 1e4, e5 for black, 1d4, d5 for black, on and on and on. It's the best thing you can do to level up your chess in 2025. Trust me on that. So I'll see you in that community. And as always, thank you so much. I wish you the best of luck in your chess improvement journey in 2025 and beyond. And I'll see you in the next video.